This lesson begins the study of the book of 2nd Chronicles. Of course, the Chronicles were not divided in the original in 1 and 2. It was continuous books, Samuel, Kings, Chronicles, but translated into Greek, the Greek language took up so much more room that they reached the end of a scroll and started over, and thus is how we came to be 1st Chronicles, 2nd Chronicles, 1st Samuel, 2nd Samuel, and so on. The word Chronicles, the Hebrew word, actually it's a long, almost phrase, and it means words of the day, and the Greek, it means things omitted, and we will find that many things in events and passages in the Chronicles give us information that is omitted in Samuel and Kings. The Latin is chronicum, thus is where we get our word Chronicles. Most scholars believe that Ezra is the author of the Chronicles. 2nd Chronicles, verse 1. And Solomon, the son of David, was strengthened in his kingdom, and the Lord his God was with him and magnified him exceedingly. Now, Solomon is the third man king. The first was Saul, he reigned 40 years. Second, David, he reigned 40 years. And Solomon reigns 40 years. 40 in biblical numerics, the number of probation. 2. Then Solomon spake unto all Israel, to the captains of the thousands and of hundreds, and to the judges, and to every governor in all Israel, the chief of the fathers. Now these are military leaders. The judges would be Levites. You would have the heads of the tribes and the heads of households. This would be the important persons in the nation. So Solomon and the congregation with him went to the high place that was at Gibeon, for there was the tabernacle of the congregation of God, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, had made in the wilderness. And just as the temple is designed by God, so was that tabernacle. The Ark of the Covenant is not in the tabernacle. David, when he successfully brought it in after it had been stolen by the Philistines and then kept in Obed-Edom, by Obed-Edom, he made a tent for it in Jerusalem. So they have gone to the original tabernacle. 4. But the ark of God brought up from Kirjath-jearim to the place which David had prepared for it. He had pitched a tent for it in Jerusalem. And getting that back, if you remember earlier studies, the Philistines had it, and they put it in their temple, and their fish god fell over. They picked him up, and they fell over and broke its head off, and they had enough of that Ark of the Covenant, so they put it on an ox cart and just drove it toward Israel. And it ended up in part of Israel. And when David and his troops went after it, they used an ox cart exactly as the Philistines had. And if you recall a person named Uzzah, he was a Levitical priest. And Levitical priests were told when the laying of the temple and who did what, they were not to touch the Ark of the Covenant. He reached out to keep it from falling when an ox stumbled and he died. And the ark was successfully brought when they bothered to read how God said it should be, and it was carried on the shoulders of Kohathites, a family of Levites. 5. Moreover, the brazen altar that Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, had made, he put before the tabernacle of the Lord, and Solomon and the congregation sought unto it. This brazen altar, it was designed for the Mosaic tabernacle. And if you recall, back in time, Korah and some of the Reubenites rebelled. They wanted to take over not only religions, but the government. And they went in with censers of brass, and the brass melted. And at another point, Korah and 250 persons who joined him, the earth opened and swallowed them. Now they took this melted brass from these censers, and they were beat into plates and attached to the altar. And that is why it is called the brazen altar, because it had brass on it from this incident of Korah. 6. And Solomon went up thither to the brazen altar before the Lord, which was at the tabernacle of the congregation, and offered 1,000 burnt offerings upon it. Now, the number 1,000 is means divine completion. And we are told that today, as in 1 Chronicles 28 told us, seek the Lord and you will find blessing. And how do we seek the Lord today? We read and we study and we pray. 7. He here has made an offering of 1,000 burnt offerings. In that night did God appear unto Solomon and said unto him, Ask what I shall give thee. Now this would be the night after this sacrifice. We learned that back in Kings. And how did God appear to Solomon? He came to him in a dream. And Jesus has told us to ask all what we need in his name, and we will be given if we are asking for something to do God's work and not something to make ourselves comfortable. 8. And Solomon said unto God, Thou hast allowed great mercy unto David my father, and hast made me to reign in his stead. So the mercy there is grace. And we learned back in 1 Chronicles, the 28th chapter, that God chose Solomon. 9. Now, O Lord God, let thy promise unto David my father be established, for thou hast made me king over a people like the dust of the earth in multitude. Now, that is the Abrahamic promise that was given to Abraham, that he would have descendants as many as the stars of the sands, and let that promise be established, he is saying. And of course, David's house, he was told that God told him that he would build him a house that would last forever. The last Davidic physical king on the throne of Israel is Zedekiah. So God is talking about Jesus, who is a descendant of David through his son Nathan. and like Solomon, a child of Bathsheba. 10. Give me now wisdom and knowledge, that I may go out and come before this people. For who can judge this thy people that is so great? And that word is mara, that knowledge, that's inner consciousness. And when he says go and come, that's day-to-day activity. And he is asked for wisdom and knowledge and not for anything else. And we're told in the New Testament, James rather tells us that if you lack wisdom, ask God. And of course, wisdom is a little bit different from street smartness. And Solomon was given wisdom. And if you remember what the story of the two women whose one child died, each one had a child, and the one infant died, and the other woman of the one who died wanted to take the live child. So Solomon sent for a sword, and he said, we'll just cut the baby in two, and you can each have half. That suited the woman of the dead baby, but the actual mother said, oh no, let her have it. And that way Solomon ascertained the actual mother. 11. And God said to Solomon, because this was in thine heart, and thou hast not asked riches, wealth, or honor, nor life of thine enemies, neither hast thou asked long life, but hast asked wisdom and knowledge for thyself, that unto mayest judge my people over whom I have made thee king. So he asked for help and wisdom so that he could be a good king. 12. Wisdom and knowledge is granted unto thee, and I will give thee riches and wealth and honor, such as none of the kings have had that have been before thee, neither there shall be any after thee have the like. Now he will have the wisdom. Notice that the long life is left out. Solomon had 300 concubines and 600 wives, and many of these were foreign, and they were allowed to bring their gods in. And even Solomon himself went up to their altars and worshipped. So Solomon did not have a long life. 13. Then Solomon came from his journey to the high place that was at Gibeon to Jerusalem, from before the tabernacle of the congregation, and reigned over Israel. 14. And Solomon gathered chariots and horsemen, and he had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen, which he placed in the chariot cities and with the king at Jerusalem. This is a defense system. Now, this is not a two-wheel chariot here. It's like a cavalry, one horse and one man. 14 through 17 are going to give us a statement of Solomon's wealth. 15. And the king made silver and gold at Jerusalem, as plenteous as stones, and cedar trees made he as the sycamore trees that are in the vale for abundance. Now, once again, that sycamore tree is not our sycamore. It is called a sycamine, big heart-shaped leaf tree bearing fruit on the trunk, and it lined streets. It provided great shade, and that was the tree that Zacchaeus climbed to get a view of Jesus. 16. And Solomon had horses brought out of Egypt and linen yarn. The king's merchants received the linen yarn at price. Now, this is a bad translation. I think they were told not to go back to Egypt, especially to build up horses. Now, that linen yarn makes not a bit of sense. In the Hebrew, it's mikveh, and it means in droves. Linen yarn had nothing to do with this, so you should read. And Solomon had horses brought out of Egypt in droves. And if you think about it, and if you know the original King James Version, the translators wrote a letter in the beginning and said that they had done the very best they could, and they apologized for any mistakes. So this is one of them. Deuteronomy 17 is the place where the king God laid out what the king should and should not do, and that is where we learn that the king is not to go to Egypt not to multiply horses especially, and not to multiply wives. So Solomon has, in his reign, done wrong in those two instances, multiplying horses and wives. Verse 17 completes this chapter. And they fetched up and brought forth out of Egypt a chariot for 600 shekels of silver, and a horse for 100 shekel, and a horse for 150. So brought they out horses for all the kings of the Hittites and for the kings of Syria by their manes. Now, these are vassal kings. They have been defeated, and they have he has made vassal kings. They're kings, but they don't have power. Now, Adonai, a son of David, he will rebel against Solomon, and both Abiathar, the high priest, and Joab will support this. And that is not in Chronicles, but it is in Kings. Chapter 2, verse 1. And Solomon determined to build a house for the name of the Lord and a house for his kingdom. So he's going to have a home and also a beautiful temple for the Lord. And Solomon sent to Hiram, the king of Tyre, saying, As thou didst deal with David my father, and didst send my father him cedars to build him a house to dwell therein, even so deal with me. Hiram there is the same as Hiram in other places. 4. Behold, I build a house to the name of the Lord my God, to dedicate it to him, and to burn before him sweet incense, for the continual showbread, and for the burnt offerings morning and evening, on the Sabbaths, and on the new moons, and on the solemn feasts of the Lord our God. This is an ordinance forever to Israel. That would have been the daily sacrifices morning and evening, and at the feast days and special days. Now this end here of Chronicles is part of a setter, and a setter was a length of scripture that was to be read and studied in one setting. So you see, First Chronicles runs over into what we call Second Chronicles. So again, because that translation into the Septuagint took more room. God said how to worship, and it laid out what they were to do on evening and morning and feast days. And then after Solomon's son Rehoboam, the nation will split, and Jeroboam will take 10 tribes to the north, and he made up his own religion. He made an eighth month holiday rather, and of course he put 2 golden calves that they could worship instead of going down to Jerusalem. 5. And the house which I build is great, for great is our God above all gods. And the temple is for man to offer, and not just incense, but to worship by offering to the Lord. 6. But who is able to build him a house, seeing the heaven and heaven of heavens cannot contain him? Who am I, then, that I should build him a house, save only to burn sacrifice before him? No, not just to burn sacrifice, but for the worship, as I said, that persons could worship and offer thank offerings and burnt sacrifices for forgiveness of sin, and all of the ways that worship and honor was laid out in the earlier books. 7. Send me therefore a man cunning to work in gold, in silver, in brass, and in iron, in purple, and crimson, and blue, and that can skill to grave with the cunning men that are with me in Judah and in Jerusalem, whom David my father did provide. He's saying, send me. That word cunning does not have a negative meaning in earlier English. It simply means skilled and talented. All of those colors, that is fabric work. He's going to be working in wood, and these Phoenicians were very skilled in cutting timber, selecting timber, and fix it for transport. So he is asking for a very skilled person who will help the persons there that he has working on the temple. Send me also cedar trees, fir trees, and algum trees out of Lebanon, for I know that thy servants, and behold, my servants shall be with thy servants. Now that algum, that is almug in other places, and Smith's Bible Dictionary tells us it's red sandalwood and was used for music instruments, and David used it to build the causeways, and it is thought that it is rosewood. 9. Even to prepare me timber in abundance, for the house which I am about to build shall be a wonderful house. And that's great and wonderful in the Hebrew. And why did he need this wood? Well, some of that was 3 stories high, and you would have to have wood beams to support the floor above. In his home and other buildings, he was a king who built a great much. 10. And behold, I will give to thy servants, the hewers that cut timber, 20,000 measures of beaten wheat, and 20,000 measures of barley, and 20,000 baths of wine, and 20,000 baths of oil. Of course, that would have been olive oil. And this was not a one-time gift. It would have been annually, and as we will learn, it takes 7 years to get this built. Now, our critics like to point out that 1 King lists a different amount. Well, that was not given to the workman. That was given to Hiram. for his household. Here it's to the workers. So there is no discrepancy at all. 11. When Hiram, the king of Tyre, answered in writing, which he sent to Solomon, because the Lord hath loved his people, he hath made thee king over him. This is different, isn't it? A heathen king, and he's talking about the Lord, capital letters all the way through, Yahweh. Now, Solomon is a very powerful person, and Hiram is being sure that he is on his good side. 12. And Hiram said, Moreover, blessed be the Lord of Israel, that made heaven and earth, who hath given to David the king a wise son, endued with prudence and understanding, that might build a house for the Lord, and a house for his kingdom. Once again, that Elohim, the Creator God. 13. And now I have sent a cunning man, endued with understanding of Hiram my fathers. Now, that word father, that does not mean a biological father. That is like a master or a counselor. Remember that Pharaoh called Joseph his father, and the same meaning is here. And this master craftsman is also named Hiram or Hiram, and it is not the king. In fact, this Hiram, we learned back in 2 Kings 7 that his mother, that he is of Dan and of Naphtali. Now, how this happened, his mother was married to Naphtali, would have been Naphtali, and then she married Dan, and then as a widow, she is married to someone in Tyre who is a stepfather. So this Hiram, that King Hiram has sent, is actually an Israelite, and we learn that back in Kings. 13. And now I have sent a cunning man, we did that one. 14. The son of a woman of the daughters of Dan. Here you have it. And his father was a man of Tyre. That would have been a stepfather, not his biological father, as I said. Skillful to work in gold and in silver, in brass, in iron, in stone, in timber, in purple, in blue, and in fine linen, and in crimson, also to grave any manner of graving, and to find out every device which shall be put to him with thy cunning man, and with the cunning man of my Lord David, thy father. So this person who is being sent is excellent with fabrics, engraving, and any manner of work, artisan work, to help with the building of this temple. 15. Now therefore the wheat and the barley, the oil and the wine, which my Lord hath spoken, that small Lord, meaning Solomon, of, let him send unto his servants. 16. And we will cut wood out of Lebanon as much as thou shalt need, and we will bring it to thee in floats by sea to Joppa, and then shall carry it up to Jerusalem. Joppa, of course, is the port city of Jerusalem this very day. Cedars of Lebanon. So what they did was tie these into log rafts, and they were floated across the Mediterranean. That has been done in our times. Timbers, logs out of the northwest or floated across the Pacific to Hawaii. 17. And Solomon numbered all the strangers that were in the land of Israel after the numbering wherewith David his father had numbered them, and they were found 150,000 and 3,600. That would be 1,153,600. Now Saul numbered foreigners, that would be Canaanites and people that David had conquered and subjected to forced labor. 18, to complete this chapter. And he set 70,000 of them to be bearers of burdens, and 80,000 to be hewers in the mountains, and 600 overseers of work. 1 Kings 5:16 tell us that he had 3,300 foremen. So these higher ranker people here will be acting as overseers in the quarries and where they were hewing stone and readying it for the building of the temple. This lesson has been an outreach of the Essex Methodist Church in Essex, Missouri, and the Crossroads Methodist Church in Dexter, Missouri.